For 15 years, my wife, Emily, and I built a life together filled with trust, laughter, and quiet routines. We had our share of challenges, like anyone, but nothing that ever shook the foundation of our marriage. Or so I thought. One quiet Saturday morning, while Emily was out running errands, I decided to tidy up the kitchen. That's when I noticed an envelope sticking out from the back of the coffee canister. It was unsealed, addressed to her sister, Claire, but the handwriting wasn't Emily's, it was from some legal office. I don't know what made me do it, but I slid the paper out. My eyes scanned the first line, and my heart skipped: confirmation of surrogacy agreement between Emily Reynolds and Claire Thompson. I froze. My wife, a surrogate? For her sister. And without telling me? I set the paper down, my mind racing. Emily and I had always talked about everything, especially big decisions. Why would she keep something like this from me? Was it money? A secret deal? Or something far more personal? When I heard her car pull into the driveway, I quickly put the letter back. My hands were still shaking when she walked in, smiling like nothing was wrong. I didn't know it then, but that letter was just the first thread. And once I started pulling, everything we built was about to unravel in ways I couldn't imagine. That evening, I tried to act normal during dinner, but my mind was miles away. Emily was talking about the grocery store running out of her favorite tea, and all I could think about was that letter hidden in the kitchen. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I set down my fork. Emily, is there something you want to tell me? She paused mid-bite, eyebrows knitting together. About what? I swallowed hard. About Claire. Her expression shifted, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. What about Claire? She asked, a little too quickly. I leaned forward. I found the letter. For a moment, the air between us was heavy with silence. Her fork clinked against the plate as she set it down. You went through my things? She asked, her voice calm, but her eyes sharp. It was in the kitchen, I said. I wasn't looking for anything. But, Emily, you're a surrogate. For your sister. Without telling me. Her gaze dropped to her lap. I was going to tell you, she said quietly. But you know how you feel about big risks. I thought you'd try to talk me out of it. Of course I would have wanted to talk about it, I said, my voice rising despite myself. This isn't just your decision, Em. You're my wife. This affects both of us. She looked up, and I could see the storm behind her eyes. Claire can't have children, she said. She's been through years of heartbreak. I couldn't just stand by and watch. She's my sister. I wanted to understand. I wanted to be supportive. But all I could feel in that moment was betrayal, because this wasn't about what she was doing. It was about how she'd done it. And I had the sinking feeling that this secret was only the beginning. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face at the dinner table, calm on the outside, but hiding something deeper. By morning, I knew I couldn't just let it go. Over coffee, I tried again. Emily, I get that you wanted to help Claire. But why keep it a secret? You've never hidden anything from me before. She stirred her coffee slowly, staring into the dark swirl. Because this isn't just about helping her, she finally said. It's about making things right. Making things right? I repeated. Her voice was soft, but each word landed heavy. Years ago, before I met you, Claire and I had a falling out. We didn't speak for almost 6 years. It was my fault. I made choices that hurt her deeply. This was my way of giving back something I could never replace. I leaned back, trying to piece it together. So, this isn't about money? She shook her head. No. Claire never asked me for this. I offered. But I didn't want you to know because I was afraid you'd think I was doing it for the wrong reasons, or that I was putting our family at risk for something that wasn't our fight. The honesty in her eyes made it harder to stay angry. Still, a knot remained in my chest. You should have trusted me enough to tell me from the start. We could have figured it out together. She looked down at her mug. I know, she whispered. But there's something else you should know. I've already started the process. Those last words hit me like a punch. This wasn't a decision we could still debate, it was already in motion that I set my coffee down so fast it sloshed over the rim. What do you mean you've already started? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Emily's hands tightened around her mug. The medical screenings, the hormone treatments. The transfer was scheduled last week. I stared at her, stunned. Last week? And you didn't tell me? Her lips trembled. I was going to, after I knew it worked. I thought maybe it wouldn't take, and then we wouldn't have to go through this fight. The room suddenly felt smaller. My mind reeled with questions, about her health, about our marriage, about what this meant for the next 9 months. So, you're saying, you might already be pregnant? She nodded once, unable to meet my eyes. I stood up and started pacing. Emily, this isn't just a secret, it's a whole second life you've been living without me. I should have been there for you, in the clinic, in the waiting room, anywhere but here, in the dark. Finally, she looked at me, tears brimming. I didn't keep you out to hurt you. I didn't want you to see me as someone who owed her sister more than she owed her husband. Her words stung because they cut too close to the truth. Right now, I wasn't sure who came first in her heart. And then, as if to make the moment even heavier, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a message, we got the results. Call me. From Claire. Emily's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. Her hand hovered over it like she was debating whether to answer at all. Go ahead, I said, my voice tight. I think I deserve to hear whatever this is too. She hesitated, then swiped to answer and put it on speaker. Hey, Claire, Emily said softly. On the other end, Claire's voice was trembling but full of relief. It worked. The doctors confirmed it this morning. You're pregnant. The words seemed to hang in the air like smoke. My chest tightened. It wasn't a possibility anymore, it was real. That's amazing, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Claire's tone shifted, becoming almost frantic. I can't thank you enough. You've given me something I thought I'd never have. But, there's something I need to tell you before you go any further with this. I glanced at Emily. What does she mean? I mouthed, but Emily just shook her head, confused. Claire's next words were like ice water. The doctors said there's a complication. Nothing dangerous for you, but, the baby isn't exactly what we expected. Emily frowned. What do you mean? There was a pause on the line, then Claire said, they need both of you, you and your husband, to come in. There's something about the embryo, something I didn't realize until now. My stomach dropped. I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that my wife had kept so much from me, or the possibility that this pregnancy might not be what any of us thought it was. The drive to the clinic felt like it took hours, even though it was barely 20 minutes. Emily sat beside me, her hands clasped in her lap, staring out the window. I kept my eyes on the road, afraid that if I looked at her, I'd either start yelling or, worse, lose my composure entirely. When we arrived, the nurse ushered us straight into a private consultation room. Claire was already there, her face pale and her eyes rimmed red. The doctor entered, holding a file. He greeted us calmly, but I could see the weight in his expression. First, congratulations, the transfer was successful. Emily is pregnant. But there's something unusual in the genetic report. Emily's fingers gripped mine tightly. Unusual how? The doctor set the file on the desk and looked directly at us. The embryo, it's not genetically your sister's and her husband's. Due to a clerical mix-up at the lab, the fertilized egg belongs to an entirely different couple. The child Emily is carrying is biologically unrelated to anyone in this room. The words hit like a physical blow. I felt my stomach knot. So, Claire's not the baby's mother. The doctor shook his head. No. And legally, this creates a very complicated situation. You were supposed to be a surrogate for a family member, but now, technically, Emily is carrying someone else's child. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. This can't be real, this can't be happening. Emily sat frozen, her face drained of color. So what happens now? She whispered. The doctor hesitated, then said, the biological parents have already been contacted. They want to meet, immediately. The next day, Emily and I found ourselves sitting in a quiet conference room at the clinic. Claire had insisted on coming too, though she kept her distance, her arms folded tightly across her chest. The door opened, and in walked a couple who looked just as uneasy as we felt. The woman clutched a leather folder to her chest, her eyes darting between Emily and me. The man, tall and reserved, extended his hand. I'm Daniel, he said, his voice low. This is my wife, Rachel. We were told, you're carrying our baby. Emily nodded slowly. Yes. I didn't know until yesterday. Rachel's voice trembled. We've been trying for 8 years. We finally had one viable embryo, and when they told us it was lost in a lab error, we thought it was over. She swallowed hard. But now, here you are. I could see the mix of hope and heartbreak in her eyes. It made me feel protective of Emily, but also strangely guilty, like we were holding something that didn't belong to us. Daniel glanced at me. We're not here to fight. We just want to be part of this. To know our child is okay. The room fell into an uneasy silence until Claire suddenly stood. This wasn't the plan. Emily was supposed to help me. Now everything's been stolen from us. Rachel's expression softened. We never meant to take anything from anyone. But this is our only chance. We can't just walk away. I looked at Emily, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. Her eyes were wet, but determined. I don't want to hurt anyone, she said. But I also can't pretend this isn't going to change all of our lives. And in that moment, I realized, we weren't just talking about pregnancy anymore. We were standing at the edge of a battle over love, loyalty, and who truly has the right to call themselves a parent. The following week was a blur of phone calls, emails, and awkward meetings. The clinic's legal team tried to mediate, but every conversation seemed to pull us further apart instead of bringing us closer. Claire stopped speaking to Emily entirely. When she did send a message, it was a short, cold text, you chose them over me. At the same time, Rachel and Daniel began pushing for regular medical updates, wanting to attend every appointment. Emily tried to accommodate them, but it became clear they weren't satisfied with just updates, they wanted influence over her diet, her schedule, even her stress levels. One evening, we invited them over for dinner in an attempt to keep things civil. It started politely enough, but midway through, Rachel's voice cut through the room. Emily, we need you to stop drinking coffee entirely. Even decaf. We read a study, Claire, who had shown up uninvited, snapped from across the table, she's not your wife to boss around. You're lucky she's even keeping that baby safe after what happened. Daniel tried to keep the peace, but Rachel was already bristling. This is our child, Claire. You have no say in anything. The room went still. I could see Emily's hands shaking as she set down her fork. Enough, she said, her voice trembling but firm. This isn't helping anyone. The stress alone is going to do more harm than any cup of coffee. But as I watched the two sides glare at each other across the table, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the first crack in what could turn into a complete war, and Emily and I were stuck in the middle. It didn't take long for things to spiral. A week after the dinner disaster, a thick envelope arrived by courier. The return address wasn't familiar, but the contents were. A legal notice. Rachel and Daniel had retained an attorney, and the document laid out their parental rights, citing state surrogacy laws that, according to them, gave them full authority over medical decisions. They weren't demanding custody, yet, but the tone was clear: we were on notice. Emily sat at the kitchen table, reading it over and over, her face pale. "They're basically telling me I'm just a vessel," she whispered. Before I could respond, Claire stormed in. "Good. Now maybe you'll finally see who you're dealing with. You need your own lawyer, Em. And if you don't stand your ground, you'll lose everything, including me." I rubbed my temples. "Claire, this isn't about taking sides, it is about taking sides," she shot back. "You either fight for what you promised me, or you let them walk all over you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Claire, I didn't plan for this. None of us did. But if you think I can just hand this baby over to you after what happened, you were never supposed to give it to them." Claire interrupted, her voice cracking. I finally raised my voice. "Enough. This is tearing everyone apart. We're going to get our own lawyer and figure out what's legal before anyone makes another demand." But deep down, I already knew, once lawyers are in the room, the fight stops being about love and starts being about winning. And this fight had only just begun. Our lawyer, Margaret Pierce, was a sharp, silver-haired woman with the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter the moment she walked in. She spread the documents across her mahogany desk, reading quickly but thoroughly. After a long silence, she looked up at us. "Well, they're not wrong. Under state law, the biological parents have significant rights." Emily's shoulders slumped. "So they can control everything? What I eat, where I go?" Margaret tapped a page with her pen. "Not exactly. They can request certain medical standards, but they cannot make binding demands unless you signed a formal surrogacy contract with them. And here's where things get interesting." I leaned forward. "Go on." She pulled out the original agreement Emily had signed, with Claire. "This contract is binding. It names Claire as the intended parent, not Rachel and Daniel. Legally, the mix-up at the clinic doesn't automatically transfer those rights. Without a new contract, the law sees you, Emily, as having custody of the child at birth." Emily blinked. "So, we could keep the baby?" Margaret held up a hand. "Legally, yes. But that doesn't mean it would be easy. They could still take you to court, and public sympathy would almost certainly be on their side once the media gets hold of it." A chill ran through me. "The media?" Margaret gave a dry smile. "Trust me, cases like this don't stay quiet. And once the court of public opinion starts weighing in, things get ugly fast." Emily and I exchanged a look. For the first time, the question wasn't who would win, it was whether anyone could. That we didn't have to tell Rachel and Daniel about the loophole. Somehow, they found out within 2 days. It happened during what was supposed to be a calm, mediated meeting at the clinic. Rachel walked in first, her face flushed with anger, Daniel right behind her with a folder clutched in his hand. Rachel didn't even sit down before she started. "So, this is your plan? Hide behind some outdated contract and steal our child?" Emily flinched. "That's not what this is. We just learned about the law." "You mean your lawyer told you how to game the system?" Daniel cut in, his voice low but sharp. He opened the folder and slid a copy of our contract across the table. "We have this now. We know exactly what you're using to keep us out." The mediator tried to step in, but Rachel's voice rose over him. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to us? We thought you were on our side. We trusted you, Emily. And now? You're turning this into a custody battle before the baby's even born." Emily's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "I haven't decided anything. But I'm not going to let anyone dictate my every move while I'm carrying this child, especially after everything that's happened. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Then you'd better be ready. Because if you want a fight, we'll give you one. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, but it wasn't to calm her, it was solidarity. We've already started talking to the press, he said quietly. People deserve to know who's really trying to take this baby away. Emily's face went pale. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just going to be a legal fight anymore. This was about to become public. That it happened faster than we could prepare for. One morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications on my phone, texts from friends, calls from relatives, even a few strangers leaving voicemails. Rachel and Daniel's story had gone public. The headline on the local news site read, "Couple fights surrogate who refuses to give up their baby." The article painted Rachel and Daniel as the heartbroken victims of a cruel twist, and Emily as the cold, unfeeling woman clinging to a child that wasn't hers. They didn't mention the lab's mistake. They didn't mention Claire. They didn't mention that Emily had started this journey to help her own sister. When we walked into the courthouse for the emergency hearing, reporters swarmed us, cameras flashing, microphones shoved into our faces. Emily. Are you stealing this baby? How do you sleep at night? What about the real parents? Inside the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Our lawyer argued that the original contract with Claire gave Emily legal standing, and that removing her from all decision-making would jeopardize her health and the baby's well-being. Rachel's lawyer painted a different picture, a desperate couple robbed by a broken system. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she stood slowly, one hand over her stomach. I never wanted this fight, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I wanted to give my sister a child. And because of a mistake I didn't make, I've been thrown into a nightmare where every decision I make is questioned, every choice criticized. This isn't about winning. It's about making sure this baby is brought into the world with love, not bitterness. The judge didn't rule that day. He ordered both sides into mediation and banned them from speaking to the press until further notice. As we walked out, past the flashing cameras and shouted questions, I realized something: no matter how this ended, nothing would ever be the same. Not for us. Not for Rachel and Daniel. And not for the child who, before even taking their first breath, had already been at the center of a battle none of us had ever planned to fight.